Welcome to Command Control Power, a weekly podcast hosted by 3 certified members of the Apple Consultants Network, drawing from over half a century of combined experience. We talk shop, interview vendors and colleagues, and share what we've learned while operating our technology consulting practices. Visit commandcontrolpower.com for show notes and click support to join our community for exclusive access to patron-only episodes, special features, merchandise, and other membership perks. This is Joe Saponari of CyMac, and my 2 co-hosts are Jerry Zigman of MacWorks and Sam Valencia of the HCS Technology Group. Thanks for listening.
I think because the doctor's office is open on Sunday, but my pulse ox was low and I had some shallow breathing, and I was just like, you know what? I know someone at 50 that kicked the bucket from this when he thought he was just feeling like so I was like, I'm going in.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, don't take any chances. You got kids. Wow. Yeah. Wow. You're in good health now. It sounds like you're pretty much back to normal.
Yeah. It took a while to get like all of it gone. I mean, you've had it, so
yeah.
You know what it's like.
Yeah. Not fun.
So what'd you take to get better, Sam? Did you take the hydroxychloroquine?
I injected some bleach. That was all good.
Say that 3 times fast.
No, quinine is in tonic water, so you just need a couple of gin and tonics. You'll be back to good health in no time.
Then I'm good all the time.
Did they actually treat you with any medication?
No, because I wasn't considered high risk. Not just how sick you are, but just, there are other factors that make you high risk. So I wasn't that.
Since you've done some volunteer work, what would they have done had you been high risk?
There are a couple of medications that have been approved that they can deliver, but they have short supply of them. I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, but they're in short supply and they rarely give them out unless someone is in that high risk category, which my EKGs were fine. My pulse ox had started to stabilize. So they were just like, here's some Tylenol. See you later.
Scary times for sure, though.
I won't lie. It was actually a little scary, because my wife had said, because a couple weeks ago I was sick, not with COVID, and I had a bad cough and everything, and my lungs weren't totally healed. So she said, we're not doctors, but she was like, you might have been, your lungs may have not have been 100% when you got it, and it made it far worse because it exacerbates your weaknesses, So that could have been something to do with why I got hit so badly. That
makes sense. I mean, I had it. I guess I want to talk a little bit about vaccine hesitancy, just as a throwback to 2020. So I of course got the original vaccine in April of 2021, and that included the two doses of Pfizer. The boosters became available kind of like at the very end of the year. I was thinking about it, and I was waiting for more information about, do these vaccines protect us against the new strains that are going around? Like at that time, it was Delta. And what do they do? Do they help us not get the disease? Do they help us make the symptoms, much less? Do they prevent transmission, or do they just decrease your risk of those more difficult outcomes, including death? If it's just the latter, for me, I'm in my 40s. I'm not at high risk from any conditions as far as I know. Lead a relatively healthy lifestyle. I didn't feel particularly at high risk. So I took a pass at the time. I didn't get a booster, and I still haven't gotten a booster. It's now, as we record, the beginning of May, and I'm looking at some upcoming international travel, and I had to just review this again. It seems like the easiest way to travel simply and freely is to be fully vaccinated, which of course now the definition is, depending on the country, oftentimes you have to, have had a booster. And then I thought, well, I don't want to just get this booster just to make travel easier. That's not really a good reason to put something into my body. Not that I have anything to be afraid of with the vaccines. I'm a huge believer. I think it's a miracle of modern science and medicine. But if I didn't feel like I otherwise needed it, I didn't want to do it just for that reason. So because I had COVID back in February of this year, and that was my second time. I originally had it in March of 2020. I can basically just show proof that I've recovered from COVID. It has to be that you have had COVID more than 11 days ago, before your trip, and not more than 180 days ago. So that, in theory, I still have the antibodies. So that's the route that I chose to go. And when I had it in February, I only had it for a day, and I was basically back to work the next day. I was pretty bad out of commission for a day. I was just really, really tired again. a lot of the same symptoms, but compressed into just a day. And then a little bit of maybe like lingering cough for like a week or two after. That definitely hung around, but I didn't feel as tired. I didn't, have any of the aches and pains and things.
And for you, back to work means walking out of the bedroom and walking over to the desk.
Right. Right. It's not a long commute. I'll give you that. I felt like this was like a good thing to just check in about, because I was actually surprised that my kind of thinking on it had evolved that way. Like a year ago, I was kind of like an automatic, like, of course, get the vaccine, get the booster, get everything, give me all the shots, And then as time went on and like the studies show the different effects and things. And again, I want to be really clear. Like, I think they're extremely effective for anybody at higher risk or anybody who just wants to minimize the symptoms when they do get the disease. But that was my decision based on the fact that I've recently had it. And I didn't think I needed another booster yet.
All of our opinions can be formed somewhat in part by personal experience as well. So what happened with my family is because I was doing that volunteer work, I got vaccinated earlier than most. And I got my vaccine a couple weeks before Jen got infected with COVID, and then my kids got it. And well, Ethan tested negative, but he had all the symptoms. I didn't get it the whole time. I was completely fine. And, we were in close proximity the whole time. And then this time around, my family had just gotten the boosters, all three of them, because they had to wait a certain amount of time because they were already infected with COVID. Then I got sick, and this strain is, considered to be super, super, super transmittable. None of them got it from me during my time. It was weird, oddly timing with the booster because they were freshly boosted, meaning a couple weeks out, which has that full efficacy. In both situations, neither one of us got it from the other. So I thought that was interesting too.
Wow.
Tom.
That's great. I mean, I haven't read as much confirming that, like it would help with transmission as much as it helps with the outcomes. I would get it if they showed that this booster has that effect with the current strains that are going around, or if they showed that like a new booster had that effect of minimizing transmission, I would be all for that. It's an interesting thing that's evolving, and like my thinking has evolved a lot. I get some people don't want to mandate getting a vaccine. At this point, if you're at risk, like you should definitely get a vaccine for your personal benefit. It doesn't necessarily look like my getting a vaccine helps anyone else as much. It's hard to say that should be mandated at that point. But of course, like distancing and masking and things and, crowds is probably a good thing.
Our variant of Omicron that's right now in the United States they're referring to it as BA2. If in fact things ramp up, and let's hope for everyone in the world that they don't, but if they do, at least here in the United States, I can already see that there's going to be a lot of pushback because people are going to say, oh, I've had it. It wasn't bad. I've been vaccinated. I got my booster. This potentially could hit a lot harder by people being unaware.
Yeah, we're not out of the woods. That's, I think, good advice to continue to be diligent. It's one of these things that's going to be with us for a while. We missed our opportunity to suppress it in the very early days. It was probably the cat was out of the bag, I think, probably before anybody even knew. But also, we didn't exactly comply very well with, the health recommendations on that. And it's just there's no like putting the cat back in the bag or whatever the saying is now. So, well, anyway, that's not why people tune in, though. I wanted to talk about rates, service offerings, managed services, like just more of a general conversation.
Yeah, time for me to tune out.
For our patrons, for anyone who supports the show on Patreon. If you don't support the show on Patreon, go to commandcontrolpower.com and click on support. We'd really appreciate it. I'm working on an offering for the patrons. It's for my own internal use, but I'm getting it ready to be able to share it with patrons. It's a tool that can help us review clients on a regular basis. So when we want to just kind of do a quick like status report for ourselves, just to be able to quickly know for our own sake how things are looking, or especially if you want to communicate that information to your client, I've been working on this numbers spreadsheet. If you're a subscriber of Watchman Monitoring, you're aware that you can export a CSV for a particular group or selection of computers to be able to do just like a quick recap of how things currently are looking for that client. But it's not in a format that I would send to a client. It's just a CSV. Now, they also do a group report, and that's also not something that I like to send to clients. It's just doesn't really keep my style. What I want to send to clients in this idealized form it's a series of columns, it's a spreadsheet. And in each column, it has just the relevant information laid out as cleanly as possible. And I want to be able to let them know, and also for my reference, about certain things that might concern them. So for example, is the Mac running a supported Mac OS version? Right now, that means it would have to be running 10.15.7, 11.6.5, or 12.3.1. If it's not, then it could very well be suffering from some security vulnerabilities. If the Mac itself doesn't support, running the latest Mac OS version, then I want to know that too. That would be a good reason to replace the Mac. Of course, Watchman has that information. It also has the information about, the estimated manufacturing date. So you can estimate like how old the Mac is. And of course, that's all laid out in Watchman, but I want to be able to put this into a numbers spreadsheet that I can sort of highlight and recap accordingly. I want to also report on how much memory machine has, how much disk percentage it has. What if the Mac is at 95% capacity, maybe having issues and may need more space? What if their memory is only 4 gigs? I've been recommending 16 gigs for a number of years now. 4 gigs is pretty minimal. So I want to highlight if a Mac has less than 16 gigs memory, if a Mac has more than, say 75% full capacity or 90%. Just going across columns that we get from Watchmen that I've chosen to include in this. You have a product description, which is a nice client-facing description that they can see, like it's an iMac 27-inch from 2017, whatever. For my own sake, when the Mac last reported, whether Watchman says it has an issue, what the current uptime is. I might even include the current uptime when I'm reporting this to the client, whether the Mac is missing. And then I've added a couple of columns to the ones that we get from Watchmen. All of the above you get right out of Watchmen. I've added a column for backup, and I can just specify what the status of the backup is. So I can say it's okay, or it's delayed, or there's no backup. I can also just type in that location. I can say Backblaze is delayed, Time Machine is up to date, something like that. And I have a notes and recommendations column. What I can do is export a group report from Watchmen. I can select the rows, computer records that I want to report. Then I can simply paste into my numbers template. And the template is set up to highlight columns and highlight cells based on the issues that I mentioned. So as you paste this information in, it instantly highlights and calls your attention to any issues. You specify in the spreadsheet which Mac OS versions you support, which disk percentages you want to see. Like if you don't care if it's over 90, maybe you care when it gets to 99%, you can adjust that amount. You can choose what age Mac you support. So in my case, I say if it's 3 to 6 years old, I highlight it in yellow. If it's 6+ years old, I highlight it in red. That's going to be the next to replace. If it's less than 3 years old, it's just green. I simply copy and paste the rows that have the information that I want, and it highlights automatically. It'll highlight in red if the Mac OS version is, 11.6.4. It will highlight in red if the OS version maximum that the machine supports is not the latest. It will highlight memory under 16 gigs. It'll highlight disk percentage over 75% or 90% in yellow or red, respectively. It will highlight Macs over a certain age, as I mentioned. It'll highlight if it hasn't been reported in too long a time. The backup one is manual because Watchman doesn't report this as part of the CSV export. So you just basically look at each machine record and just make a selection for the backup. And you can do that based on your own policies. If you support having only Backblaze, then you can just say backup is okay. If you support, having only Time Machine, you can select it's okay if it's up to date. You can make notes in the recommendations column there, and then you can basically just copy and paste the output into Mail, and you get a really nicely formatted recap that you can then, reference to your clients.
Is the format in the way that you want the end result to be for the customer?
It's a lot closer to it than what we get, straight out of Watchmen or other tools, because I've formatted the way I want. Won't work for everybody. But one of the things I'll do is actually just delete the columns that I don't want to include, even if I include them in my initial review. Like if I have them for my internal reference, fine. But I may not include all of the columns in that copy and paste job that I send to the client.
certainly put a lot of hard work into it, Joe. And I like it even for internal use, just to aggregate the information in a little bit more cohesive way to eyeball when assessing a client, either before going on site or maybe having some sort of a remote meeting. I've always been frustrated with the lack of reporting utilities that have been delivered with Watchmen when you subscribe. And this certainly fills a big gaping hole in that. It'd be nice if we could customize it just a little bit and maybe room for a little logo to throw up there. Maybe somebody else with some ninja skills can swoop in and do a little bit more fine tuning. But as it is, it's highly usable and extremely valuable.
Nice. Thank you. This was designed to make my regular reviews, in theory, monthly review of every client more efficient. This is basically like the tool that I needed to be able to do that, to be able to, like you said, Jerry, just basically, for internal reference, just quickly highlight the relevant issues for me. It lets me then communicate that to the client, whether I send them this form or just like a narrative about this or, whatever the case may be, or even on a phone call, just as a quick way to refer to different issues. Because it's gotten me thinking a lot more about, what our service offering is, what our managed service offering is. As people know, I deal with a lot of residential clients, and some of them do have 5 Macs or, whatever. I mean, it's not like it's just necessarily only 1 or 2 where I can just look at a glance at the status of one computer. Sometimes there are a handful of Macs, and we run it more like a very small business. And certainly for the business clients, on the order of up to, tens of endpoints in my case, not much larger than that. It's very useful for that as well. And I think we have a really strong service offering. The presentation to the client is, do you want to have the burden off your shoulders to worry about this stuff? Do you want the peace of mind to know that someone is taking care of things, will be alerted to issues, and that we're also regularly reviewing to see if there are any issues, and also, proactively letting you know, hey, it's time to replace this computer, or these 5 Macs are going to need replacement this year. That's a high value to a client, I think, if they care. I mean, the alternative is they don't care. Some clients just kind of skate by until something happens when they have to care. But for the clients that do actually care, this is how we can kind of show them that we care too. And
can you send me some of those clients, Joe? Because
the clients that care.
Yeah,
the ones that care.
Those are the keepers, I could use a few.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's talk about that too, because I think that that's the buyer for this kind of service is the client who cares, and who sees the value in paying you monthly, whatever your price is. Do either of you guys want to say, kind of give her a range of what you might charge or what you've heard colleagues charging on a monthly basis for basic alerting? Let's say you install Watchmen and Adagi on a client Mac, for all the clients in a household or a small business, let's say, 10 users, whatever you call that, it's monitoring and maintenance and management. What do you think is a fair charge range that you've heard out there in the market for that service?
I mean, I can tell you that I've heard a wide range of pricing because I think it depends on how you're going to package your whole deal. I've heard some people charge, upwards of $100 because they're also incorporating everything. It's like a one size fits all, and this is a per user rate. On the side of the coin of looking at a Watchman Adagi combination, I would also throw in, your splash top or your team viewer or whatever as part of those costs. So maybe 25 to 30 a month per computer for something like that. And that probably could stand to be updated, I would think, these days. That's probably older pricing. Combine it with something else. You also combine hours per month, right? And you get a discount amount of hours per month if you buy so many.
I've been flip-flopping on that a little bit because in the past I thought, well, this would be a great pitch, charge them a flat monthly fee. When I did this, say, 5 to 10 years ago, I was charging clients flat monthly fee that included, all of the monitoring, maintenance, and so on, in addition to what I called quick fixes. So anything I think I said 15 minutes and below, if it's a quick, I can just hop on, fix it, and hop off within, 10 minutes or whatever, that's included in the monthly plan. In some cases, or in many cases, some amount of billable time, like prepaid hours. And at the time I thought, well, this is great. They get a discount on the time. I get predictable income. They get predictable expenses, and it should cover most of their regular needs. And then, of course, the problem with that is that the buy-in is much higher. If you're saying across the board, we include, let's say it's a residence and they need you for a few hours per year on average, you might include 15 minutes per month and that's it. They don't need you for 2 or 3 months, and then they need you for an hour, whatever the number that works out, you can average it out and just include that amount per month. Problem is, like, it brings up the bottom end. There's no like entry level plan to say, here's the entry level price that just includes the monthly service, not the hours.
My own experience, at least this is the way I'm rolling down the highway now, is that I used to offer 2 packages. One would be just doing monitoring, and one would be monitoring along with Adigy. I've mentioned it on other shows, and I'll continue to beat this drum. I've phased out the monitoring completely, and I basically say we don't have that. If somebody asks, this is the buy-in, and my buy-in is roughly around $40 a month. If they want to get Backblaze and we add a value to Backblaze, we tell them that we're doing 24-hour monitoring of that backup. So it's not like them buying Backblaze and getting maybe the weekly email. We're watching it every single day. At least this is what we propose to our clients. So it's an extra $10 more. What adds a little bit of enticement to them considering that is I really strive to tell them that we're going to be doing malware checking, always in the background, of course, built into Adigy. You have this feature, so we're always looking for malware. We're going to keep them from getting in trouble. And then we offer them just a small discount on the hourly rate. And right now that's at 7%. And just that little bit seems to be the tipping point for them and pushes them over the edge. And I've had great success, people doing that conversion from just doing alerts, which was just a waste of time. All my work, every single email were the people who ignored my messages, and those were the ones who were just doing alerts. And now everybody goes into the Adigy and alerts, and either with Backblaze or not with Backblaze, and it's worked out really well.
Nice, man. I'm happy to hear that that's still working well. I remember you mentioning that you did that transition to just increase the buy-in. You have to go all in for the monitoring and maintenance, including Adigy. And I like that, not only it sounds like it acts as a filter for you. Like if you're not a buyer at the full, full stack price, if you want it just at the low price, it's like you don't care enough to really respond when there are issues. Not only that, but like you can also, with Adigy on there, you can fix some issues. You can go in and like use the command line, or, it just gives you that unattended access with live desktop, to be able to just jump on and fix something. So that's definitely a nice advantage, on our side too.
When they run into trouble and they didn't participate in the offering, that's the perfect time to say, once you get them back on track, if you had done this, this could have been preempted. Not 100% guarantee, but we could have avoided all this. Right. And usually that's also a way for them to convert over.
It's tough to word that. I mean, how would you word that? Because it is kind of a subtle thing to say, like, can't say that like you definitely wouldn't have had the issue, but here's how it might have helped.
I would do it over the phone. I would have that conversation. Sometimes it's people just not being aware that they're not even backing up. If you're on our plan, we're going to save you these problems. I'll be perfectly candid. I don't have a lot of residential customers that are on these plans. It's mostly the small business or the single entrepreneur subscribing. So I would probably tweak it a little bit. I would probably lower the fee a little bit, lower the entry point for them buying a bundle for the family. Let's say mom and pop and the kids, family of 4, tweaked price.
Sure. I have lower pricing on a per user basis than most people. I'm less than what you're charging. But what I do is like there's the entry level personal price is higher priced. The residential price is higher priced, factoring on the order of like if you had 3 or 4 users or something like that. And I don't charge more for the residents, based on if you have, like, I don't care if you have 4 kids or 2 kids or, just 2 spouses, whatever. I just have a flat rate for the residents. And that includes the rate discount, in addition to all of the tools. Now, I feel like an aggregate that can kind of work out because some people are paying that for 2 people. Some people are paying that for, 5 computers, whatever. And our tools get more expensive in that case. If you're looking at those costs that Sam mentioned earlier, kind of do have to factor that in. So I feel like I need to look at my numbers again to make sure that the scale makes sense. Certain clients at certain sizes that, I'm not losing money on it essentially by not charging per user at those lower levels. I do for a company, I charge a base price for a team of 5. So if you're 3 people in a company or 4 people or 5 people, it's the same price. When you go to 6, 7, 8, then I charge per user, but my rates are lower per user, and I think I need to look at that again.
Interesting. So you have below 5 is like a package deal, and then after that it becomes a per user cost.
Exactly. And that's just to kind of get me like a base, easy to think about number for a lot of my, smaller clients. There is a certain overhead in just like managing the company, even if it is 2 people, 3, 4, 5, it's all the same.
Yeah.
And then it kind of scales past that. But like a company of 2, I'm doing better by charging like a certain base amount for that.
As we talk about our variety and pricing, and then people that we interview have their own pricing. And I wonder how much all over the map this is. If we really sat down and looked at it all, and like, would I charge for a 5-person company versus you or Jerry or, one of our interviewees? I'd be curious to see where those numbers land and just see if we're like, whatever formulas we use, are we coming around to that same price, or are we like wildly different from each other?
Yeah,
totally. It's just something that gets me thinking, which is why it's probably, part of what we do here together is try and collaborate with people and figure stuff out. And it's helped me understand my own pricing. At the same time, it'd be interesting to really focus and put it together and see what those numbers truly look like.
I'm not sure it would be a fair comparison, only because of the fact that, cost of living and housing costs in certain areas and how successful business is. I would imagine if you're on the West Coast in a real hotbed for work and business, prices are higher. If you're in the Midwest somewhere, the prices may be lower.
Then just with us 3, Jerry, let's do a quick comparison. We'll just put down some spreadsheets and start.
Well,
looking.
we could throw it out right now to the listeners, or maybe we should save that for a Patreon.
I think that'd be a patrons only thing, if anything. But suffice it to say, I think like the 3 of us are within maybe 10% of each other.
I think so,
something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you look at it, like to your point, Jerry, across the country, I mean, the market varies, crazily across it. So I think like some of the numbers I've seen from colleagues, like what they're currently charging, I think it's going to be 3 to 4x spread from the minimum price to the high end price. I mean, I'm sure there's some outliers, but if you leave off the outliers and you just kind of do like, the clustered numbers like at the low end and the high end, I think it would be like 3 to 4x spread. That's pretty significant. I don't know if the same thing happens with plumbers and electricians and things necessarily. You get some variation. But, I've been thinking about this also in the scope of hiring, subcontracting with someone you could find in theory, somebody who's like exceptional at remote support in a totally different market, who's charging at the high end of their market, who is willing to work for their normal posted rate, work for me, for my clients, and I'm able to charge more because my clients are in a higher market area. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme to make money off of someone else's efforts, but that's the whole point of a lot of commerce, I guess, is to hire somebody to do the job and the business has to make money. So I've been thinking about that, as a way to scale, to try to find very highly qualified remote workers who can, make a really good living working for me at their normal rate, essentially. So yeah, I guess that's a floater for anybody who's interested out there. Obviously, a topic we do talk about, especially now, this week as we record, it's Small Business Week. Hooray for us small business owners. We're job creators here in the United States. I think it's a good thing to celebrate. Also, maybe a time to make a move potentially in this area. And another occasion for kind of making a move with our rates is the fact that it's all over the news that inflation is very high right now in this country. Not surprising, I think, when you flood a bunch of really cheap money into the market en masse, what would happen is people have extra cash to spend, and there's only so many goods to go around and services, and so prices go up because demand is artificially inflated by the cheap money going into the system. And supply is the same as it was before. And it's also getting worse, in the case of parts and things like that. Supply is the same or worse. Demand is way up. So prices go up, inflation. Because it's a thing that's in the news, it's kind of this like understood thing. You can't escape it. It's not a bad time to think about raising our rates. Have you guys thought about this lately?
You're usually the front runner with this, and then Jerry and I might follow your lead on that. So I've been waiting for you to say this.
It's time, guys. Get ready.
Yeah. I like the thought of really increasing the hourly rate, non-contractual, basically. Something that's like, hey, if you want us in a one-off scenario, our rate is, X number of the times of our discounted rate, and really putting it so it's not appealing to people. Because I want that long-term relationship. I want people to be like, let's engage for a bigger thing. And so that's one thing that I thought of doing, is just expanding that gap between my hourly and my contract rates, my discounted rates.
Right. So I went through that a few years ago. The last time I raised my rates was about 4 years ago, almost to the month. I seem to do this about almost every 4 years or so. Increase the posted rate, or like the rate is, I don't post it necessarily publicly, but the rate that I quote you if you're just like a new client or one-off client kind of thing, announced to my managed service clients, they would get a very significant discount on that rate. I just increased the spread between contract rate and the public rate. What I wanted to happen was I wanted more people to sign up for our monthly services. That it has gone well, but I was surprised at how many people just like pay the full rate and don't sign up for the monthly services. And I'm not sure I want to keep that. I mean, I have a very significant discount. Jerry, you said about 7% discount. Is that kind of standard for your contract clients?
Well, that's where I am right now. And, I've rethought this just like you have and Sam has. If I had to take a read on where people are at, a lot of clients, residential or business, everybody's kind of in the here and now. And I think sometimes if you come at people with too much paper and you could do this, you could do this, it's like, which jacuzzi do you want? The one with the 12 jets or the one with the 32 jets? And after a while, people get all cloudy. They just basically want their services taken care of. So I find like simpler is better. And so I have one rate. And if you, like I said, if you got the monthly thing of Watchman and monitoring, we're going to give you a little dip on the hourly rate. Keep it real simple. And my hourly rate is the same for business or for residential. I've never really differentiated, and that seemed to have worked out. I've never had a residential client throw up their hands and walk away because, they realize the importance of maybe what they need to have done. People seem to be more in the here and now because they don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. What's happened in the last 2 years is you put them in a different mindset. So it almost reinforces that philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, that brings to mind something you talked about, selling a client on a monthly subscription, but getting paid upfront for the year. And then, you have these hours banked, and or these months of service banked. Whatever happens, you have to provide the service, deal with the client demands and things. So in some cases, like that may not work for the client because they may go out of business in 6 months. And you may feel bad at that point, like you owed them time and they're no more.
Yeah, but I'm not selling them hours. So it's just that recurring fee with the monitoring and the maintenance. They're still going to need their computer. Their business may shutter their doors, but they're still going to need their computer every single day.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's a certain amount of significance and importance that the client puts on that. Gone are the days, at least in our area, where you're walking into a building and you have 12 creatives sitting in front of IMAX working in Adobe Creative Suite, and you've got a server in the server room. I'd love to have some of those clients back, but they're gone. That doesn't exist anymore, for me anyway.
Yeah, and supporting a client, 12 people that are now remote is just different. Handling all the support remotely and stuff.
Right. Well, that even adds more importance to at least making sure that even if it's the employee's computer, you can make a real easy case for, we don't want that to get infected with malware because that could possibly translate into the shared archive that we have for our business, and employers have a concern for even the remote computers that they don't own.
Talking about the days of walking into a customer office with multiple creatives and a server, I just re-engaged with a customer from over a decade ago. We haven't landed them again yet, but I do want to talk about it with you guys at some point. It brings up a discussion about working with the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite and working on cloud versus the server and all this stuff that I wanted to bounce off you guys. So throwing that out there as a place marker, since you mentioned it, Jerry, I think there's this one particular customer that might be a good one to throw around the batting cage here.
We'll put a pin in it, Sam, for you.
So I'm thinking of doing a rate increase, and I'm thinking of increasing it by about 9%, which is posted like inflation number. I was thinking of calling it out. This is a 9% increase over our previous rate, which we haven't changed in 4 to 5 years. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like whether to say it's 9% more, whether to say the last increase was 4 to 5 years ago, or just say several years ago, or just not mention that, not mention either of those things. How much do you couch this? How much do you hedge it? On the topic of like the discounting. So Jerry, like in your case, if you were to raise your public rate, like your posted rate to 9% above what it is now, and you don't want your contract clients to be thinking about, whether they should question anything, you could essentially like increase your discount to them from 7%, 15%, or whatever the number is, because it depends on your rate and all. Or maybe you don't keep their number exactly where it is, but you increase it slightly so that essentially like now you're giving them a 10% discount, and it sounds even better, looks even better. It stays close to the original contract rate, and everybody else gets that full 9%.
Gets
increase.
Eased up a little bit. Yeah. You run into that thing of the frog in the pot and the boiling water sometimes when you hit these thresholds. So let's say, your hourly rate is $185 and you want to make it $225. It's really hard to go over that $200 threshold. It's like $225, or it could be, $325, or right. I don't, maybe in some cases we have consultants charging, in the fours. That's a real tough leap. If you do a little small incremental bump every year, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to make that transition. And if somebody balks and you're like, Jesus, you're at $225 now, you could say, well, right, but we were charging you like $199 or $205 last year. So yeah, this is a very small increase for us. It's less than 10%. Right. But sometimes making those jumps, those $100 jumps psychologically is a tough one to present to a client.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're at $299.95, $299.99, as soon as you go 301, so it's
right.
Like,
it sounds like a lot.
Whoa, 3 something. What? Like, and in the past, I've always thought like I don't play these games of retail pricing levels and stuff. Like I'm above that. It seems cheap or something, but like it's a real thing, that whole psychological aspect of like, does it end in a 9 or a 5, or is it a 97? I don't know if you guys have noticed people selling online services, selling a workshop or like a summit content, like it could be PDFs and videos and stuff and whatever. But like,
I believe they're called guides, Joe.
Guides, exactly. If you want to monetize those guides you're making, then you might want to have the price end in a 7, because it seems like they all are originally, $4.99 and now it's like $2.97. So I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of thing that all of those people who are selling their services like bought into, like some seminar that they bought into that said like price it like this, So we're just getting the trickle down pricing of that. But I mean, maybe I should end it in the 7 or something. I think,
when you mentioned this just a moment ago, I'm chuckling with you. I'm not chuckling at you. You want to break out when you do that increase. You want to present the client, well, look, I have a 10-year analysis of our fees, and see, back in 1996 we were here, and now you haven't had an increase for. At the end of the day, most clients, they don't really care. Okay, this is where you're at. I'm either going to take it or leave it.
I don't care about your reasoning.
Exactly.
How does the number feel to me? It's a great point. And I've kind of already decided on the general range, and I'm trying to narrow down like the exact number and structure, and also like the discount level and stuff, because that's all.
You have the dartboard out with the different numbers on it.
Right. You're just
you and Ashley are throwing it at the dartboard.
Exactly. Like where does it land? And I might change the way I do this discounting. I like the idea of saying across the board, if you're a contract client, you get the discount, and this is what the discount is. I have in the past had 2 levels of discounting, 10% or 20%. 20% is very high. That's based on a prepaid. If they're a monthly subscriber and they prepay for time, they get that very significant
How much
discount.
time? 20 hours? 40 hours?
Oh, it starts at 4 hours and above. It's like peanuts, it's minimal.
And a 20% discount? I want to buy time from you.
I know. This all goes back to what you brought up earlier about I've increased my normal rate significantly, but I didn't want to make all my current clients like run away, most of all my contracts.
Where are they going to go? Sam and I are going to stand by you, so they're not going to go to us. So where else are they going to go?
Okay, here's the thing dealing with
there are a couple of options.
So, there are other options, by the way.
Jimmy's PC Discount Warehouse?
Yeah, exactly. There's the like break fix people. There's the like local big box stores. There's like, a couple of independent places.
Well, now we're competing with Best Buy. Okay.
Well, but here's the other thing with residential. They just don't call you. So they don't go anywhere. Now they just don't have backups anymore. They don't like their computers are falling apart and they don't care. So that's the thing. I mean, and maybe that's not my problem, but obviously I'd like those people to be taken care of, and I'd like them to continue to pay me. So I'm trying not to alienate them. But so that's the nature of that. Where that discount came from.
But you have mentioned on the show and privately that both you and Sam are really not in a price sensitive area.
Well, that's true. I mean, it will affect some clients, and I guess I could handle that on a case-by-case basis. You know, the worst case is if they just balk and run away and don't say anything to me, and they stop calling me and they don't respond to my emails. Maybe if I reach out, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. You know, if they do write me back and say, this is steep, you know, maybe I can say, hey, you know, don't worry. If we can get you on a contract, we'll give you an even more special discount or something, you know, or we'll honor the old rate or whatever.
Send it. I'll talk to them for you.
Yeah.
We'll take another look at it, but normally this is our rate and this is where we're at, but you've been a good client. We'll run this up the flagpole one more time.
It'll be like the car dealership. You'll take it to Jared. Let me take it from my boss, and we'll have a look at it.
Right. I may do away with like a special separate discount for the prepaid block of time and just do like if you're on a contract, you just get a flat discount across the board. Maybe I will play with the discount. The rate's going up and the discount's going down. I mean, that might be a little tough for some of the contract clients. But I guess I could also roll out that adjustment over time. Here's our new rates for everybody. Contract clients get an additional like 3 months before anything changes, and then an additional 3 months of, I don't know. Maybe I honor the old rate for 6 months total.
Well, maybe you could take Sam's idea and run with it a little further and sit them down and just ask them how much they want to pay a month. Like the used car dealer or the new car dealer. How much you want to pay a month?
Right. Honestly, I kind of want to ask clients that question sometimes. Like when I pitch them on my monthly service and, it's like either radio silence or they say, okay, think about it, whatever. I'd rather have them give me a number than not make a sale. I kind of do some of it anyway. And I know that, Jerry, this is like totally against your whole approach, but like I might still have Watchman Monitoring on there, so that I can be aware of like an issue on a machine that I really think is important and I don't want to have a surprise problem.
You're regressing again, Joe.
I know. But my point is, wouldn't you rather get something from them every month than nothing?
But I don't know, because then you're like diminishing your value. If you get like crap from them, then it's like, oh, Joe's only worth this when... I don't know. And it also creates some inconsistency for you and stuff. So
it worked for Priceline. Like, what do you want to pay? Like you bid on a flight, right? Isn't that how that worked?
But it's a brave new world out there, Joe. These people know what bread and milk cost. But this is a place where you can buy non-fungible tokens for $10,000. And so, they're not used to, my point is they're not used to paying for IT services. So, whether they're going to pay you $10 or $30 or $40, they don't really know. You have to tell them, you have to bring them down that path. Sam and I are trying to lead you down the path yourself, and you keep on turning around and wanting to go back.
I have to look at this and just finalize it this week. I think I'm just going to move forward with one of these numbers that kind of resonates with me and just dive in and just move forward and see what happens. It's just typically what I end up doing in the past. It's not going to blow up my business in my face. But speaking of $10,000 non-fungible tokens, don't you sometimes want to charge more for the people that can afford it?
Oh, you can't have it both ways.
The appeal of a sliding scale, it's like, what is it worth to you? If you have more money than you know what to do with, and you just want our greatest level of service, maybe we do have it's not a posted rate or like an option that we present to people. How can we present it to those clients? Like,
how can we gouge you because you have a 4-car garage?
But why shouldn't we? Like, why shouldn't we? They like, to them, in all honesty, like if you take two people, person A and person B, and person A has $10 million in the bank and person B has $10,000 in the bank, and they're both really good people to work with, and they both have one Mac and one iPhone, and they need help from me. The person who has $10 million in the bank probably won't miss 10x of my rate if they paid that for my service. They'd probably be happy just to get absolute top tier support. That's what their extra money is going toward.
Spoken like a true liberal. The rich should pay more because they can afford it.
Jerry does his voices of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
at least we know where I